My name is Michelle Ngele Oviambo. On the big story tonight, the 2018 KCPD results are out in record time. And for the second consecutive year, no leakage was recorded in the examination. The examination also recorded a better overall performance than last year, with 2 students tying at position 1 with 453 marks out of a possible 500. Well, it is a good story to tell, isn't it? But wait, there is a national crisis tied to the examination. According to Education CS Amina Mohammed, the number of pregnant KCP candidates have been on the rise since the government started a deliberate measure to tame exam cheating 3 years ago. The connection between exam security and the rise in the number of teen pregnancies is not clear though. And even though a team in the Education Ministry burns the midnight oil to get to the bottom of this crisis, the blame has now been placed squarely on parents who are accused of abdicating their role in the well-being of their own children. And even as the girls bear the full brunt of what the CS says is a national crisis, they continue to compete well with the boys. 2 who tied at position 1 this year were a boy and a girl. Probably the main reason why CS Amina believes the examination was administered in a very equal playing field.
The 2018 national examinations were conducted on one of the most level playing fields ever. We have completely wiped out cases where examinations were leaked with much abandon. And once again, I want to assure you today that none of the 9 papers administered in KCPE was leaked.
Well, on the short night, I shall be speaking to 2 education experts, Ndio Bondo and Wesaya Minor. But as usual, before I engage them, I bring in our lead reporter, Sophia Nuna, who is live in Kilimani here in Nairobi. Sophia, good evening. What is the new development on that side of the city with regards to the KCPE results?
Good evening, Michelle. Indeed, this is one for the history books. Record time of the release of the results of the Kenya Certificate of Primary Education examinations. 2 weeks out, and candidates 1.05 million around the country now know how it is they performed in the national examinations. And as the performance improved and the celebration around that, the blot in this year's KCP is what you just mentioned, those teen pregnancies. We kept reporting about them, one after the other. And whilst the ministry is saying they will not shoulder the burden alone, that parents also carry some responsibility, that's a conversation that's continuing. But also questions that are being raised are around the 100% transition that the president and the education cabinet secretary have promised that all of these candidates will be placed in the secondary school. And the question has been, has the infrastructure been put in place? Because remember, over the years, we've been seeing 500,000, hundreds of thousands miss out in places. And so what has changed to ensure that this 100% transition takes place? And also on this year's national examinations, the issue of cost has been raised. A lot of money going into that. The security, some critics arguing it was overly militarized, seeing all of those security men and women around the examination centers. And of course, there was also the executive showing up in their numbers, including the president and the deputy president during examination days to encourage the students. Some saw it as a positive, some criticized it, saying if you're not used to seeing these individuals and they come to your school on this one day, you're nervous and you're about to sit a very important examination, does it work to help you focus, or is it a distraction? Well, let's get more perspectives from a man who tells me he's a teacher by profession. He's a Tinderate member of parliament, but also the chairman of the education committee in the National Assembly. That's Julius Melly. Thank you for making time for us. So I've said quite a mouthful there about some of the issues we've been able to see around the examinations this year. But I'd want to begin with an overview from you on the various issues and how they were conducted, how you'd rate the management of the exams KCPE 2018.
Thank you, Sophia. And first of all, let me congratulate the candidates. Let me also thank the managers of the Kenya National Examination Council, starting all the way from the CS down to the teacher in the classroom. Sophia, you'll realize that the process was just superb. It was good. As a teacher, I would say the tests achieved what it is intended to do, in the sense that the students sat for the exams on time, the marking went on time, and the results were released. A good test is supposed to be released on time and to elicit a good response. You'll realize that the whole exercise was done in a record time. And let me tell you that this one is very important. And I want to tell you, any exam that is given out and it is not released on time is actually not good. Every test has a certain results that we expected of. That one, it is supposed to ensure that what has been taught or what the learner has gone through in any educational program is actually released, and those who are involved, especially the teachers, the curriculum developers, and even the parents, are supposed to see this particular result in the student, especially in their performance. When I talk about performance here, I'm talking about the understanding of the curriculum, the understanding of the subject, their even communication skills, and all this.
Yeah. Allow me to interject, because whilst you celebrate the release in record time, there are those who criticize that what if a shoddy job was done? Because results would come after Christmas. Last year, at least, it came slightly before. But this is way before Christmas, way before December. So 1.05 million candidates. How confident are we that a good job was done?
Yes, a good job was done. And let me tell you today that in the previous years, exams used to be marked on time, a record time, but they used to be what we call bureaucratic delays, unnecessarily. Bureaucratic delays unnecessarily because exams had been marked, most of them actually because of the multiple choice type of questions. They are marked using machines. They only have composition and insha to be marked by teachers, which they'll finish in actually 1 week's time. And all this time over the years, because I've been a marker myself earlier on, back in 1997, most of them, you just be seated waiting for results to be finished, and any mischievous person can come in at that particular time and actually interfere with it. So to me, this is exactly the meaning as a profession of education, that exams are marked, the results are released, and the people involved could be able, the stakeholders could be able to assess how it is and how it can be rectified in the near future.
Yeah. Yes. Let's also talk about this 100% transition that has been said over and over again. Yes. It's something, again, over the years, Kenya has not managed to achieve. What we are not being told is what has Kenya done differently this year to ensure this transition happens, as has been promised, and in terms of infrastructure, because the numbers were partly because there are just not enough schools. You have more primary schools, more students, and you transition with 400. So the manpower, the infrastructure, what has changed in 2018?
Let me just tell you this, Sophia, that the government, the Jubilee government, under the leadership of the president, in 2016-2017, they put an enormous 1.5 billion shillings into the construction of classrooms in secondary schools, laboratories in secondary schools, and you realize that last year alone, this is not the beginning of this year, last year we had achieved 100% transition. You'll realize that most schools were actually extended to be double, triple stream, and even quadruple streams. And the government gave out that particular money. In fact, thousands of classrooms were actually constructed across the country. This year, as a chair of education, the government also has put in over around 2 billion shillings in construction of schools, which now the ministry needs to disburse on time so that these schools will be ready. And on top of that, there was a record employment of about 5,000 teachers, or around 10,000 teachers last year, to meet the growing number of students in secondary schools. This year, we are hoping also to ensure that we have over 5,000 students, 5,000 teachers again, to be recruited to ensure that the 100% transition is attained. On top of that, the government made payment of fees, especially in day secondary schools. It is free. Free in the sense that schools are not allowed to charge, not a penny. And I'm talking to you this because at times schools charge lunches, which is an arrangement between the parents and the schools. And it is strictly free. That's why the government gives out 22,000 shillings per student. They go to day secondary schools across the country. So in this sense, 100% transition is achievable. I've seen it in my constituency. I've seen it across the country. And in fact, I want to laud what happened last year, that even the DCs and the chiefs were told students must report after class 8, they must account for every child. And this is the same thing we're also saying as leaders. Every chief, every assistant chief has to account for every student who starts for class 8. They must go for the neighboring secondary school or even the neighboring day school or boarding school.
And we'll wait to see how that plays out in coming days. But let's talk about that worrying scenario of the teenage pregnancies. And I'll begin with, was it appropriate for the government to still have these candidates a day, hours after giving birth, sit examinations? Because there is room for the, what are they called? The test you do later. Supplementary, thank you. There's room for that. Why wasn't that put in place? And I made this point, I think, before on the show. Mothers are given 3 months after giving birth from work. This is a child who has not yet gotten to adulthood, is carrying pregnancy, has given birth, and then has to sit this very important examination. Wasn't that out of order in your view?
It wasn't out of order. And let me tell you, we've come a long way as a country. Earlier on, I think in the 80s and even early 90s, when a girl got pregnant, she was actually dismissed from school. And we as educationists, then, and even now, we are saying every child has a right to education. And when we talk about teenage pregnancies, actually this mirrors about the kind of society where we are in. It is the society wholly to blame. Because earlier on, you look at even the pre-independence period and even up to the early 70s, pregnancies in schools were actually unheard of. Because the parents taught about their children ethics, the mothers taught their daughters, and they were brought very well. The boys were taught by their fathers that they don't need to engage in premarital sex before they become of age. But currently, sex is everywhere. Sex is in the advertisement, sex is in the television, sex is even the parents, it's in the phones, it is everywhere. So whom do you blame? The teacher alone cannot actually handle that. The school administrator cannot handle that. You cannot blame anyone. You have to have a whole look at the society. Why has the society taken sex as very casual, as something that can be done anyhow? To this, I want to say this, that if we don't allow these children, I saw what happened in a neighboring country where a senior leader is saying students who have become pregnant should be sent out of school. That is going to be very bad. In fact, we are looking on a better way on how we can ask the parents to take charge. And everybody in the society has to take charge and treat sex as sacred, something that cannot be done in a very casual way. Two, the ministry, I think in future, and we offer in the Ministry of Education, we'll look at it in future and say we can have a supplementary exam. It is normal. A supplementary exam.
It has happened last year.
And it's expensive, let me tell you. It has a cost, but we need to have structures in place so that we can have a supplementary exam that is going to be done in an orderly way, and who is going to sit for this exam. In normal circumstances at the university, and even in other types of examinations, a supplementary exam is sat when certain conditions have been met. So if we just allow everybody to just say, oh, I'll sit supplementary, you will just have millions of students sitting for the main exam and supplementary exam. We must make it a bit difficult for people not to just have a leeway to do it. But for now, I want to support the ministry for allowing these girls to sit for exams, and they will do well in their lives. Yes.
Indeed, because it takes a village to raise a child. So everyone, and these are conversations that must happen, and we hope your committee will lead charge in that. But finally, as we take this back to studio, talk to me about the cost of this examination. There was criticism around papers being printed outside the country. Why does that need to happen? The kind of security we saw, is it what we thank for the no cheating incidences as has been reported? But was it unnecessarily expensive in your view?
It wasn't unnecessarily expensive. Let me tell you, to have confidence, to have trust, and to be able to make sure that every exam is actually that which is trustworthy. We had sunk to a level where if you went to foreign countries, Kenyans were seen as individuals who would just dub exams, who are people who are copying exams, and everybody else would say, if you are Kenyan, you can be subjected to a pre-university exam. And that is why I want to support the president, and I want to support the minister, especially our current CS, the way she took it with a lot of commitment, with a lot of, every time she was out there trying to ensure that everyone is out. In fact, you saw the Deputy President, you saw the President himself, all the leaders, the CSS, everyone went there. It is not the expense that we are talking about. We want to restore sanity and order. We want to restore confidence in the Kenyan exam. Kenyans in this region are leaders in education. The moment we lose that position, we'll even lose to be the leading professionals in Eastern and Southern Africa. So in this sense, when we put some money, we put some time, we put some commitment into this exam, we have not invested in vain. We have actually invested for the future and the trust of the nation. Yeah. Yes.
Any area for improvement? As I said, it was the last question, but an area for improvement. You've lauded a lot of the work, but for you, any area of improvement in execution of national examinations?
Definitely, we are doing well, but we are supposed to do excellently well. I want to laud, especially the leadership in the Kenya National Examination Council, because they are just people who are very serious, they are very firm, they are strict, and they are orderly. What we need to do, there are so many areas that we need to do improvement. One of it is to ensure that all the teachers themselves and even the officers handling this make examination a process that is going to be taken seriously by every Kenyan across the country. We don't want to make it as if we need to condition these people. We want to make it that as they're growing up as teachers, they know that an exam is something that we need to take it seriously. Two, we also need to make sure that even the printing of exams, as you are allowed, there are certain areas that we print from outside the country to restore their confidence. We also need to ensure that our people in this country treat this with all the seriousness that it deserves. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Many thanks, Member of Parliament Tinderet. So that's Julius Melly. He also is the chair of the Committee of Education in the National Assembly. Michelle.
All right, many thanks, Sophia Nuna there, our lead reporter. Let's take a quick look at this year's KCPE numbers compared to last year. Like we said, a good story there. It is to tell. So the comparison there in this year, the total number of candidates that sat for KCPE were 1,052,364. That is a rise from 2017's 993,718. So we see a rise there of slightly more than 100,000 shillings and 100,000 candidates, sorry, I beg your pardon. And again, in terms of gender parity, the comparison with 2018 and 2017, in 2017, we had 498,775 boys sitting for the KCPE examinations as compared to this year's 527,294. Again, a rise in the number of boys that sat for the KCPE examination. The number of girls that sat for the examination last year, 494,943. That is in 2017. In this year, the number of girls that sat for the same examination stood at 525,070 girls. So you compare the numbers there, a clear increase in both the number of boys and girls that sat for this examination. Now, in terms of performance, let's take a look at how 2018 fared there. We had 12,273 candidates scoring more than 400 marks. 12,273. Now, 2,177 scored below 100 marks. That is this year alone. Let's compare that to last year. That is in 2017 there, where we had only 9,846 pupils score more than 400 marks. So we have an increase this year in the number of 400 marks we have, while 2,360 scored below 100 marks last year. Again, a slight reduction of those who scored less than 100 marks this year. We also, again, looking in terms of performance, the top pupil this year scored 453 marks out of the total 500. We had 2 pupils tie in this position, and this was just 2 marks less of last year's top score, which was 455 out of the total 500. Now, the biggest story to tell in this conversation is that there was no exam cheating per se, as reported there by the Ministry of Education. No exam leakage, with pupils not having their results cancelled in the last 2 years. And most importantly, good news there for students from the government, which says no student will miss a place in secondary school. The formal and selection process will begin on Monday this year, with the president assuring all candidates that they will be getting a placement letter by Christmas Day. Well, before we bring in our education experts in studio tonight, live and exclusive, Olive Mwaya Washira, top candidate this year from Riara School, Nairobi. She came in at 453 marks, tying in with Rawlings Odhiambo from Kakamega Hills. Olive, good evening.
Good evening.
Good to have you on the show tonight. Congratulations, first of all.
Thank you.
How do you feel about being the top candidate this year?
I feel really excited, and it's just a good feeling.
It is a good feeling, and I mean, it's a tight spot there. You know, you came in the first position with the Rawlings Odhiambo. 453 marks is not fit. You got an A in everything. Which was your favorite subject in school?
Math.
Math was your favorite subject?
Yes.
Which is quite interesting, because many girls don't like math. So which was your worst subject, which you still scored an A in?
The subject that I had the most problems in was English.
But you still scored an A?
Yeah.
All right. Let's talk about how this exam fared on. There were many concerns about the security that was layered in these exams. How would you describe the entire exam period for you?
It was kind of frightening, because this was the first national exam I had ever done.
Right.
But the invigilator we had was friendly, and she guided us.
Mm-hmm. So you say it was quite frightening. What was frightening for you?
Okay, from the time you're doing the exam, you're already thinking about the results, and worrying about what you'll get. So it's frightening.
All right, so you're the top student, 453 marks. Which school would you like to go to in secondary school?
The schools that I had selected were Kenya High, Kianda, Riara Girls,
right,
and Brookhouse.
And Brookhouse, wow. So what do you want to be after you attend those schools in future?
I would like to become a pharmacist.
You'd like to become a pharmacist. That's great. So once again, you tied in with Rawlings Odhiambo, and you know, many would say it's quite a win to have a girl in the top position. You had a girl in the top position again last year. How does that make you feel?
I feel really good. I never really thought that I'd be the top this year, but here I am.
Here you are, and a lot of students are looking up to you. Many of them will be sitting for the exams this year. What word of encouragement do you have for them?
To have faith, to keep working hard, and to never give up no matter what.
Never give up no matter what. Were those your secrets to success? Because you say you never expected to be here. What helped you get here?
the same things.
All right. That is Olive Moya Washira. She is from Riara School in Nairobi. She was a top candidate there, scoring 453 marks, tying in with Rawlings Odhiambo from Kakamega Hills. Many thanks for speaking to us. She is joining us live from our city center studios. All right, now on the show tonight, I speak to two education experts, Ndiwo Obondo as well as Wesaya Minor. Gentlemen, welcome to the big story tonight. KCPD results are out in record time, and by all means, it is a good story to tell for the country. Wesaya, let me begin with you as we talk about the high points of this exam. For the second year running, no exam cheating has been recorded, and again, an increase in the number of 400 mark scores we had in the country.
Well, thank you, Michelle, for having me. Let me begin by congratulating the candidates who sat this year's KCPD examination. They have done their bit. We are in a situation where they now have to transit into secondary education. So congratulations for them for putting in the effort so that they transit within the education system to the next level. But there's something that is troubling to me as an individual when we peg the integrity of the education system on a 3-day exam.
Right.
In as much as the Kenya National Examination Council talks of no cheating, they were recorded 4 incidences of impersonation. So I don't know how they have classified that, but then they may, have an opportunity to explain this going forward. But for me, the highlight of this exam is that these children have sat this exam 8 years after we promulgated the Constitution. So they have had the longest period of instruction under elements that were picked from the Constitution. The cohort that sat this exam may be the youngest cohort this country has ever registered for a Class 8 sitting an exam.
Right.
We also saw that the Kenya National Examination Council increased the number of optical mark recognition machines to 20. Those machines had capacity to mark up to 10,000 scripts every day. 23 counties recorded, having more girls in school, but that statistic in itself should not lie to us, because there are hidden difficulties for girls to access education in Kenya still. We will begin selection on the 3rd of December, and a departure from a tradition where children, and the first candidate you had there, the top candidate in Kenya, gave you a list of schools she wishes to join.
Right.
But if you listen to the cabinet secretary, she mentioned there'll only be one selection. So what that means to the learners is what the ministry and the KNEC need to explain to stakeholders. Does it mean that you only get the first school that you indicated you want to join? If you miss that, you are allocated a school randomly? Or how will that look like?
All right.
But for me, the biggest thing is that 2,177 candidates scored from 0 to 100 marks. Now, for you to understand that...
we'll be coming back with that in just a moment. I apologize for that. Let me just hear from Ndiwo in just a moment. Ndiwo, what is the highlight of this exam for you?
Thank you very much, Michelle. I think from where I stand, 3 things came out very strongly in this. One is the multi-agency approach and the increased vigil of the exam and the tight control that actually has led to some public confidence on the credibility and the integrity of the exam. We've seen this coming along the last 2-3 years, but at least this year it was more intense. And I would think that looking at our history, this is it called for, because if you are in a country of fraudsters where everybody wants to take advantage of a system, I think this kind of measures have led to this kind of confidence. The other thing that we also saw is a case where we are celebrating 2 like I think we are talking of Rawlings and Olive, who scored over 450. I think as individuals, as families, they should be able to celebrate. But as a country, we shouldn't be celebrating. Because if you look at a case where you have over 1 million candidates sitting for an exam, and those who meet the threshold are not even over 51%, then something is wrong with what we do. And I would think that we need to look at the kind of zeal and support we've given to the exams. We need now to focus and push that back to learning and teaching in our schools.
All right, that is Andiwa Oboyo. We also have Osaya Maina, education experts in studio. When we come back, we focus on the bigger problem that marred the exams this year, and that was the cases of teen pregnancies reported. Also, when we come back, we'll be headed live to the Kisumu International Airport, where we speak live to the other top student, Rollins Odhiambo from Kakamega Hills. He also scored 453 marks. This is a big story. Stay with us.